Good evening. This work session of the School Board of Osseo Area Schools is being held in the forum room of the Educational Service Center on Tuesday, September 9th, 2025. The work session is being audio recorded. The recording will be made available on the district website within 2 business days after the work session is ended. With regard to the audio recording, our communication staff has asked that we share a friendly reminder that side conversations during the work session are picked up by the recorder and can affect sound quality. Also, conversations during transitions between agenda items are on the recording as well. The intent of the school board work session is to allow for school board discussion of topics. Work sessions do not include an opportunity for audience members to address the board. To acknowledge attendance this evening, I'll ask that all present at the table state their names, starting with the person to the left.
Tanya Prince, school board member.
Keith Tate, school board member.
Erica Foster, school board member.
Yvonne Schwartzland, executive director of HR.
Brian Severson Hall, executive director of community engagement.
Brian Bass, assistant superintendent for community achievement.
Robert Sandoval, architects and engineers.
Denise Schoenfeld, architects and engineers.
John Morstead, executive director of finance and operations.
Kay Ball, executive director of community relations.
Steve Flisk, assistant superintendent, elementary.
Anthony Barnes, executive director of technology.
Sarah Mitchell, school board member. Kelsey Dawson, school board member.
Kim Heil, superintendent.
And I, Thomas Brooks, school board member and president. The purpose of school board work sessions is to build trust and teamwork, to exchange information, and when applicable, to provide direction in order to facilitate efficient and effective decision-making at regular board meetings. Dr. Heil, will you please share your check-in?
Thank you. I'm excited for us to get started today, so thank you, Vice Chair Brooks, and good evening, board members and everyone else here this evening. So we're going to get started right away with our Crestview update, and then I'll have John Morstead introduce who's presenting with you this evening.
All right, thank you, Dr. Heil. Vice Chair Brooks, Chair Prince, board members, the whole gang. Great to be with you again today. So with me today for this presentation is Lene Schoen from Wold and Robert Satin from Wold. And then also Dr. Bass and Brian Severson Hall will be involved as well. So as we were talking about, and I was thinking about the Crestview, what started as a repurpose and is now a complete rebuild, a whole lot has changed from what we originally thought was going to happen in this building. And we went from what is a very common practice in schools to say, well, we've got this building, what can we fit in it? To what we're going to show you today, which is a very stark contrast different. It is where I think it's safe to say that we are all extremely proud and excited to be presenting this update to you of where we are today versus where we were almost a year ago when we were digging into this process. And so it's been a great opportunity, and we're really happy to be able to do this. So the opportunity that unfolded and led us to recommend to you to tear down the building has allowed, with your direction, us to really dig into what's important for our community and what this facility should be to represent the district as a whole. So tonight we're going to walk you through a little journey, starting with where we went from the direction you gave us. So we're going to kind of not talk about the first round of what we did, but from where you said, hey, when you starting over with a clean slate, we need you to re-engage the community, and moving forward from that point. Working with the community, working with stakeholders to come up with a flagship facility that is intended to be a huge community asset for generations to come. So that's where we're at. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lene, who's going to talk and walk our way through the design development process, timeline, community input, some of those pieces, and we're going to kind of interject through it and talk about all the different things that we've been doing to get to today, and ultimately to the design update that we'll show you at the end for what we expect the building to actually look like. So Lene, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Brooks, Chair Prince, Dr. Heil, members of the board, the rest of the gang. Thank you so much for having us tonight. Robert and I are excited to share with you and team with Brian and Brian, different names tonight.
Brian's clear.
On presenting the Brians on this exciting project. Once again, on behalf of the architects and engineers, thank you so much for this opportunity to pair and team with your community on this exciting project. We are excited to talk a little bit about the design development process. Much like all of your buildings, new ones, remodels, small projects, big projects, we've really included a participatory planning process. We know that you hold that dearly as a board, to include your community in this really important work. We're going to talk a little bit about the timeline, just refresh you, where we've been, what we're up to, and where we're heading next. Talk about the community input, because that's been a lot of heavy lifting and exciting conversations. We're also going to talk about the format of the user input that we have gone through. We're going to talk as a team here on the anticipated programming for that building, and then give you the design update and show you some of the images as we've done in the past with other projects and what this is starting to look like. So I'll just refresh the team here where we're at with the project. What you're looking at is a diagram that shows the project broken down by phase. And so we've broken the project down by really looking at the site, if you read the chart from left to right, doing schematic design, which is big picture visioning, and that's where we've engaged what we call a core planning group. You'll hear about that group in a little bit to just really set the boulders on how the building is organized and the vision setting for the project. Then we get into design development, which is the phase that we're just starting to wrap up, where we've met with more users and started to actually design the building. And we're at the point now where we're starting to roll into what we call contract documents. That's actually creating the blueprints, if you will, for the project, working and coordinating with your technology team, your safety and security team, and making sure that we've got all those important elements in the contract documents. And then we will start construction. So we plan to go through the public bidding process on this project in January, February of 2026, and then start construction. I do want to share that one thing that's unique about this schedule is that there is the existing building that we do need to take down on that site. And as you can see here, we are working on documents, and you will start seeing action on that start happening at the beginning of October. And an anticipated occupancy then again is fall of 2027 for the project.
Yeah, and I think the last time we were together was all the way back like the end of January. So it's been a while since the last time we talked about the repurposed site at Crestview. But just a couple of highlights from the last time we were together. We had some discussion about what it really means to be a repurposed site. And that's where the kind of the mandatory pre-K or settling on pre-K as being the significant academic component of the site. Again, to refresh everyone's memory, significant isn't defined, that's kind of a loose term, but we said at least half of what is currently there. And previously there were around 200 students pre-K through grade 5 attending Crestview. So the mandatory pre-K, we set that to try to serve between 100 and 125 students to meet that state statute threshold for repurposing a site. This group talked a lot about what might happen in this building during the non-school hours and the summer hours, so there was some feedback on that. There was some strong feedback about what might academic support look like at this repurposed site, and then also some questions, wonderings about what might community opportunities or partnerships look at this site. Those were kind of the 4 takeaways that our group had thinking back to what happened in January. So after that meeting, that influenced our intercession work that we did in these last 9 months. So you can see, we'll cover some of these, and I think Steve and Brian and John, anyone else can jump in because we all experience these in different ways. We had a meeting with Minneapolis Public Schools admin team, including their early childhood coordinator. They have some heritage ECFE classes, which include classes in multiple languages. They have even specialty classes for parents who are single parents. They kind of have a wide range of programming. We do have some of that in ECFE, but we also thought this was a nice tie-in to our suggestions from having heritage pre-K programs like in Dakota, Hmong, Hispanic, and infusing that into the curriculum for students who will be able to attend pre-K programming at the new repurposed site. We also did site visits to see, I'll use the general term, to see other like multi-use buildings, I guess would be the way I would phrase it. So you can see up there multiple visits, Hugo Elementary, cultural, some Hokakata Cultural Center, so some native programming, American Indian Magnet School, Dakota Valley Early Learning Center, and the Minneapolis YMCA. So all of these are different buildings that some of them are more multi-use than others. Some have a very specific purpose, plus have other community meetings in them. So you can see you see pictures from some of our visits there. And then a couple of things we did a little targeted services review. So, what programs we currently offer in targeted services and at what schools in our school district. Currently, we operate targeted services at 9, our BPK at 9 of the elementary schools and targeted services at 11 schools. So we do already have after-school academic enrichment at a lot of sites, but we just did because of that interest in what might academic support look like in after-school hours, we thought it was a good time to kind of do what would you call that, a census or a survey of what we currently offer. And then one thing we added was VPK interviews. So a big shout out to Carrie Cave and Sarah Luby within our district. They visited all 9 of our VPK sites. They typically spent around 2 to 3 hours at each of the sites interviewing the principal, the teacher, and the ESPs who are in the VPK programs to get an idea of what is currently happening, what is missing, how is our VPK programs aligning with our kindergarten curriculum, what might it look like to do culturally specific classes, and then also our BLAST program. They also visited our BLAST program. I think I mentioned this year we added a program at Oakview that combines voluntary pre-K with a fee-based wraparound pre-K. A lot of the feedback that we get from our families that participate in voluntary pre-K is that a 2.5 hour program just really doesn't fit people's schedule. For a lot of people, that just simply doesn't work. So what would it look like to offer some wraparound care and do, we call it, sounds fancy, but braided funding, right? So like how do you do some funding that's provided through the government, some funding that might be provided by individual parents, and then it allows them that full day experience that they want, especially for folks who are working families and can't do drop off, pick off, can't do, that just doesn't work for them. And we're in year 2 of that program at Oakview, and it's filled up both years, not quite that fast, but within an hour and a half of opening, which is pretty quick, right, to get 20-25 kids. So we think that's a possibility at the repurposed site, where you maybe, instead of just saying this is VPK, this is ECFE, well, here's kind of pre-K offerings, and here's one classroom might be more of a wraparound VPK, one might be a traditional VPK, one might be a 4-year-old ECFE program. So we think there's, through these interviews and to say that VPK people are excited to see that a school or a wing of a school might be dedicated to them solely is an understatement. I don't know, Steve, if you would add anything from Carrie, or if anyone wants to add anything from either any of these 4. This is just the visit intercession work. We're going to get to the other input from our actual, folks who live and work in our school district, but this is kind of our visit intercession work.
I would just underscore again, I think the options piece and kind of the exciting experiences that we had at Oakview, and what the newer site may mean, and then obviously, I think you'll see some of the spaces here, what that's going to be for the real littles and the experience that they have and the options. So I think part of that excitement too is that purposeful investment in the programs, and kind of how the history of the rollout of VPK to now this real sort of active, purposeful planning. I think is going to be an exciting opportunity, and two, with the VPK, we at times look at that as sort of our front porch of it for the district, and so how we invite families in, and so I think that combination of the new facility is just going to be pretty powerful.
I don't know, John or Brian, if you have anything to add for like the site visits or.
think you hit it.
Oh, I did? Okay, good. One thing I didn't say in my note, I didn't cover that I just noticed in my notes. The way I phrase this is, because we talked about some like really big programs that happen in some other communities as well, right? You know, so I think one of the things through doing some of these studies is what's the right scale for a smaller site like this versus some of these programs, whether it's a NAS or whether it's a district-wide program. That's a different scale than here's one smaller site. We looked at all of these things, and that's why we visited some of these bigger multi-use sites. So I felt good in what might programming look like for one site and to also have great learning. So that was a little bit of the intercession, site visits, program exploration from other school districts, and kind of an internal review of some of the things that we're currently doing. So those are some of the things we've done in the last 7 months since we all were, because it feels like a long time. Well, I feel like it's been a long time since we've talked about Crestview. I don't know everyone in here, but we've done a ton of work with these site visits, and you're going to get to hear next kind of what we've done with actual meetings. And I know some of you attended our community gatherings at Crestview to get community input as well. We're going to talk about that. So we just wanted to make sure, while we don't always are able to 100% cover everything you give us feedback on, we do everything we can to go back and follow up on it. And frankly, I think the BPK interviews it was not my idea, but it was brilliant. And I think it was well worth the 27 to 30 hours of interview time that Carrie and Sarah did on our behalf to go and find out what's going on in BPK, what can be improved if we're going to really go for it, to have a community center, community school that has a early childhood emphasis to it. So that would be my summation of the site intercession work.
And one of the things I would add to go with that is you learn so much on a site visit to someone else's site. Because number one, they've thought of things you haven't thought of. They've found problems that you haven't discovered are there yet. And one of my favorite questions to ask is, what would you do differently? You've had this, you've lived in this for X amount of time, what would you change? And you start to uncover really a lot of little nuanced things that allow you to make some very thoughtful tweaks to maybe the direction you're going, or to go, wow, I never would have considered pairing those two programs together. I don't have a good example of what that is, but to go, that's a really cool way to do that. I wonder if we could make that work. So being willing to get outside of your own district and see what those new things are, and the conversation with Minneapolis when they came in here opened my eyes a lot, just to see what the possibilities of what we can actually do if we are really willing to take a couple risks. And that's, I think that, to me, really sums up the direction that I felt you guys gave us, which is be willing to take a few risks and look and see what else is there that's important, and make sure that we're turning all the stones. So.
Yeah, and I think the Minneapolis one too speaks to something that we've put in the space before already, but just because when you open the doors, just because that's the programming that's happening in September of 2020 or 2027, is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. Of course, you still adjust to what are the new community needs as they come up, right? So each of these heritage ECFE classes that they were describing, they didn't all exist at the same time, right? They were all added or subtracted based on what the needs of the community were at any particular time. So I think that was affirming to us on these things aren't as static or as set in stone as they might look. There's going to be some core cornerstone programming at the site, but there's also the ability to adjust as needed. Brian?
Yeah, I just would offer that as we think about, like, how do we, as the architects are taking our ideas and taking the input from the different user groups, to see how other buildings in other spaces, how they did that work, and did they get it right? And so John's point about, like, what they learned, the problems they discovered, or what challenges they had along the way, it for me, it opened up an intentionality of when we come back to our space, here's what we want to really be intentional and thoughtful about given all the different examples that we looked at. Because folks were trying to capture it in a way that they thought was the essence of that programming. And then they learned all this stuff along the way. And so to be able to have the benefit of seeing those spaces and seeing some of the challenges in those spaces and then saying, okay, we can't do everything, but the things that we do, we want to do it very well and very thoughtful. And it just was great to see those examples. It was super helpful. So, just for that perspective.
So we'll jump. Oops, did I jumped one, yep, sorry. So, and Lene, you can maybe go over the process at core planning because you know better than the rest of us.
Sure. This is a key piece of the process that we started with, and we started with the same process for a lot of the larger remodels and the new elementary school. And so the district was so kind of put together a representation of program leaders, parents, students, your facilities team to help guide the conversations on what did we want the school to be. It was a beautiful blend of people that represented multiple different programs. We had some wonderful conversations with a couple of students that joined us and really gave us some input on community outreach and what the students would like to see, and students that actually lived in the neighborhood that would participate in this, and so it was really great. So we had blended conversations. This is the group that actually toured all of the buildings as well, so you'll see them kind of show up in some of the photos that we've included in the presentation. But they helped build a common language, as Brian had mentioned, so that we could talk about what that vision is and using the same terminology as we designed. So here's a great photo of that group actually rolling up their sleeves and doing the work. So we had some community input sessions. I can speak to one that we had at that building, which was great. Thank you to those of you who were able to join us. We had members of the community that were invited to give input. We really just had kind of an open work session. We set up stations that really allowed the visitors to come through and provide input on exterior design aesthetics. If you live in the neighborhood, what do you want to see when you look out your window, or when you're taking your walk with your pet or your children in the stroller? What do you want to experience? Interior design aesthetics. What represents you as a community member, whether it's color or art or natural light. We had another station that talked about site design. You know, how would you engage with the site in regards to how walking paths engage with the building and natural topography you'd like to see. And then also construction information. Again, if you're going to be looking at this site for the next year or two, we wanted to share the information on what this is going to look like in the process for that, so that your neighbors were well informed. This is an example of the output of some of those conversations. What you're seeing here in these photographs are just some images that we like to bring with us so that people can engage and have something to react to, and this is what I like, or this represents what was in my head and what I'm trying to articulate. Some of the things that you can see here were obviously mark things up. We went through the exercise where people were able to say, hey, give us a green dot on some things that you really enjoy. Give us a red dot on maybe some things that aren't in alignment with your vision. And you can see here are some of the common themes that we heard in regards to interiors of the building and exterior of the building, natural tones, contrasting materials, stepped massing, wood accents. Indoor to outdoor connection, you're going to see a lot of that as the result of the project, of being able to connect with nature and be able to see the outdoors. Outdoor seating, places for wandering, natural color tones, exposed wood, places for display was really important, natural light, and making sure this building was warm and welcoming. The next round then is that big picture vision was set, and again, that was only just one round of participatory planning, multiple meetings, 2-hour sessions every evening. We then broke down into user groups where we were able to meet with the people who actually work and live in these spaces so that they can share what they need. So for this part of that participatory planning, it was we did 2 rounds of meetings, approximately 20 meetings, if you can imagine 6 to 8 to 10 people at each of those meetings, so really covered a lot of ground and input. The meeting groups are broken down into pre-K, ECFE, American Indian Education, Community Kitchen, thinking about professional development in that workforce center or that welcome center, receiving custodial, how does facilities need to work in this building, the FACE program, and then again academic enrichment.
And it's important to note in these, so we mentioned the core planning group, so that's this group of a variety of experts and community members and so forth. These groups are people who are going to live in these spaces or potentially use these spaces, so they're not the same, some of the same people, but you're also digging deeper. You're bringing in pre-K teachers, parents who might be using that, or ECFE programming. You're bringing in the staff from Indian Education and some community members with them to get input as you work down each one of those layers. So you're trying to, this is the detail of like, what do you physically want to see in the building? Where is it important for you to have certain aesthetics or functionality? How do you want a maker's space to look? How are you going to use it in your group versus how are you going to use it in this group over here? So there's times when those intersected, so especially when we're talking about a community kitchen or a maker's space, multiple groups, we needed input from all of them because they're all going to use it a little bit different. So it's I just think it's important to know that this is the really part where we expand out and get a lot of opinion from a lot of people to say, how exactly would you use a space that might look like this? And then we tweak from there and go, okay, we'll add this, we'll take away that, and so on and so forth.
A lot of sketching and drawing with this group, with these groups. Okay, so what we have here is
Well,
just
Lenny, could I add one?
Please do.
Yeah, thank you. And one thing that came about on some of the user groups is, this is a roommate situation, right? So how's the space going to be shared? So this is very different than saying, here's an elementary school and it's pre-K through 5 every day, right? This is multiple programs, multiple community users, multiple ages, multi-generational, right? So there was some, how is this space going to be shared? There was also some agreements that were reached, mixed use at all times, right? So this isn't like we traditionally have in our, I can speak to this as the person who oversees community use of school facilities. This isn't like this, all these schools are blanket reserved by Osceola area schools from 7:30 till 5, and then they're open to community, right? This is a community space. So what does that look like? So there's not necessarily a designated school time, so to speak. It's a school, there'll be designated times when the pre-K programs are happening, but that's why, I don't know if there was always a security meeting in the other core planning teams, but we definitely added a security meeting to one of these user groups that wasn't up there on this slide, to talk about what would it look like to have VPK going on, ECFE going on, and 200 people showing up for a professional development or community gathering at the same time in the same building, right? So that was when we kind of landed on this. We're roommates, it's a shared space, it's mixed use at all times. Well, how the heck are we gonna think about safety and security in that type of space? And there are ways that we'll see as we go along that you can block off certain parts of the space while you're doing it. So that was just one thing that came. The more you get people together, the more ideas you get, and also the more holes get poked in your ideas, right? Or more questions get asked. So I think that was one thing that I made note of quick on this security meeting that got added, to just think about. It's different than some of our other buildings, right? So how might that look on a daily basis? Thank you.
It's a great segue into the roommates, so we can introduce to you just the general diagram for the building. We won't go into the detail of all of the details of the floor plan, but one of the most exciting conversations was how do you blend that open door type of environment, welcoming environment for the community, and how do you meet the standards that the district has set for your school facilities, right? So if you're looking at this diagram, I'll just point out the blue area. That's really representing the pre-K component. We have to have that secure entrance. We want to be able to control and understand who's engaging with our kiddos during the school day. And so that portion of the building really has that lockdown capability so that you can manage who's in that part of the building. One thing that's also exciting too is that the building is designed on the exterior for perimeter security to act just like a school, so that you are able to lock it down. You are able to manage the front door if you want to manage the front door. So as Brian mentioned, we met with your safety and security team, as we always do. We talk about where's that flexibility. If you want an open door policy every day or during certain hours of the day, you can do that as a district. If you want to be able to lock it down, you can do that as a district. And so you have the opportunity to choose to manage that building however you'd like. There's a welcome center, which is the core component and area of the building. And then there's the ECFE component, and then there's that American Indian Ed portion, which is in the green. And you can see a lot of arrows there that connect the building to the site. Upper level is professional development and a couple of flexible classrooms up here too.
Yeah, that upper level is, would that be the lower portion, is like the professional development, and then on the left where you see those 3 rooms, that's where we added academic enrichment support spaces to that upper section. So it's not all PD, it's a kind of a combination of PD and then academic enrichment support area designated. And there's also still multi-use spaces on the lower level too that can be used for either, but we specifically added some spaces that'll be pretty easy to use for things like academic support, tutoring, things like that.
I would add the large PD space is more like a large multi-purpose space. Because I know we had talked about, you could host a youth summit in there if you need to bring 100 to 200 students into a common location. So it's just a large gathering space that could also be used to serve and support different academic opportunities if we needed to bring a large group of students together.
And then again, like all of the other projects, that core planning group that we mentioned put together some guiding principles. We won't go through all of these, but you can see some common themes are safe and welcoming, making sure that this building is designed of the community. I thought that was a powerful statement. Universal design, outdoor features should be prominent. Celebrate the multicultural community partnerships, cultural heritage, making sure that we're inviting and inspiring our visitors, and interactive learning.
So now, as you're looking at this, we're going to kind of go through, and I'm going to lean on my program experts over here, what programming we see as in 2 different categories that would most likely live here. I'll start just discussing the basics of the anchor programming, so things like the ECFE pre-K or VPK. Originally, when we made the decision to temporarily close the building, it was for grade reconfiguration. So we need to change the grades that are in the school, but it's still a school. And so VPK is really the representation of that. So we still fulfill what we said we would do with the Department of Education. American Indian Education in this building is intended to have a permanent home within the district. They've moved numerous times over their lifetime in our district. We wanted them to have a permanent home. This is where that's intended to be. And then the family and community engagement program, and I'll let Dr. Bass talk about that as the expert, but again, just seemed like a really, really good fit for what we're trying to accomplish here.
And as we mentioned earlier too, the pre-K meets the legal requirements of the state of Minnesota for repurposed site. And then the first ECFE pre-K, VPK, and American Indian Education. All 3 of those programs meet one of our goals and one of our focuses on academics. And did Kay just put these new strategic priority chart on here? If you look on strategy B, build and nurture a culture of achievement by providing content-rich, rigorous, equitable, and individualized pathways. So we think those top 3 programs meet strategic priority B. And certainly, Brian, Dr. Bass can speak to the FACE, but that meets priority C around inclusive participation of our communities. So.
Thank you. So I actually connected with Ethan Neerdals, our AIE, our American Indian Education Coordinator, and he offered some thoughts about the space that I wanted to share. The American Indian Cultural Resource Center will serve as the hub for the American Indian Education Department and its community-based programs. The center includes a Dakota and Ojibwe language learning lab, a makerspace for traditional arts and food sovereignty initiatives. this is an Ojibwe, Miigwech Ikwe, I think that's how you say it, library collection and dedicated offices. So there's over 2,000 books by Indigenous authors in that library collection and dedicated offices for Indian education staff. In addition to housing these resources, the center will provide space for community gatherings such as drum and dance, regalia making, and American Indian Parent Advisory Committee meetings, as well as professional development opportunities for staff. So that's how he and his team in the user group that he got to work with, those are some of their thoughts about the space. For family and community engagement, for some of our newer board members to this conversation around FACE, the FACE department has a goal of strengthening and sustaining authentic relationships. So this is all about our strategic direction C, promoting inclusive participation from all community stakeholders. FACE hosts cultural celebrations, family enrichment events, and scholar engagement opportunities that honor and reflect the breadth of diversity across our school district. We also provide, FACE also provides gathering space for community partners, offer enrichment opportunities for parents and caregivers, and deliver professional development for staff. So you see some of those intergenerational themes coming up in the FACE department's programming.
Yeah, so thanks, Brian. And then I just made up these words, those aren't what we're maybe going to use, but kind of the anchor programming, right, is kind of how we're thinking about it. And then all the rest of the spaces are really dynamic programming, right, because the spaces can be multi-use. So community kitchen certainly can be utilized to support groups that are there, but also can be utilized to support some of our transition programs. So even here at the ESC, we've got our 279er diner where young people who are transitioning receive student services, get some job training, so that's an opportunity. Certainly the professional development space is just going to be gorgeous and meet all of our needs, a lot of our needs for, I think a lot of folks in the room are aware of how often we pay for space because we don't have spaces in our district that can accommodate some of our larger groups, and certainly I think community groups, once they see a up-to-date, state-of-the-art professional development center, they're going to want to access that as well. The academic enrichment and professional development spaces certainly can meet some of our needs for summer targeted services, potential to bring back freedom schools because they're just going to be a nice size space for that, tutoring, credit recovery. We'll get to talk about the Welcome Center a little later. It's really large. I happen to be at, where was I today? Park Center. It was one of the stops. And I was talking to Eric Thompson, one of their assistant principals, and he's like, oh yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. And he's like, here's how I want to use it. And I said, okay, just text me. So he said, as a part of our district's commitment to CTE strands, Park Center senior high students participating in our Exploring the Teaching Profession course would like to go to the new community school once it is open as a part of their coursework. Students can assist in early childhood experiences. This will increase their opportunities to engage in practical experiences. So I think one of the things that's going to happen when we create dynamic spaces is people are already thinking about how they might access it in a way that they don't have the ability to do for programming that they currently have. So I'll be curious even as we get further along in this process, because unless we ask people or unless people offer it up, we don't know what they're thinking about yet, but it's still not early in the process, but still toward the beginning third of the process. I think things like this will come up. That was just literally in a conversation while we were working with some students. And then last but not least, of course, all the community partnerships that are possible, like Brooklyn Bridge Alliance, youth summits. There's all sorts of things that I think can be utilized in that space, but kind of anchor programming, dynamic programming, and again, dynamic programming can change based on the needs that are arising.
For the professional development space, I think Anthony Paterno spoke a little bit.
That's an understatement. We never have, I'm sorry, Brian, but we never have enough room to have professional development for our staff. We're at churches, we're at everywhere. We're everywhere. And we're crunched like this when we're in a room together too. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
I did ask Emily Woolsey, and so for the Division of Leadership, Teaching and Learning, to put some numbers together, just on average, how much are we spending annually by not having our own space? And she said we spend between $31,500 and $37,500 each year renting outside venues for professional learning. That's just
their department.
Right, that's not
Could you
other,
repeat that? It was
departments.
31.
31 to 37,000 a year. So that's
Just
it.
for our.
Yeah.
Just for DLT.
Yeah, and even, my community ed department, we rent out Three Rivers Park District, we rent out all sorts of, we go to all sorts of different places because, like my Kids Stop team, just for one example, that's, 250 staff. We just don't have a space that's conducive for a true professional development, so we go elsewhere. So but that's a good number. We hadn't spelled out the actual what we're spending on that.
And it have a state-of-the-art facility that emphasizes our core values of innovation and excellence. I mean, this space is going to be laid out for ideal collaboration, and that's just, I mean, it's going to be transformative for us to be able to have that in district, to be able to have the space in district. So those are a couple of points we wanted to also emphasize around the professional development space.
As a curiosity, Brian, could it hold a 279 gala?
You know what, it's funny, because we were just talking about that.
I think it could.
No, we have to work around the.
100%.
Yeah, we could.
Because the downstairs would be where we did the auction downstairs.
Well, the auction would be downstairs.
Well,
You're just all
Look what you're doing,
mad.
Tanya. Yeah.
I don't want to squash ideas, but
Well,
It could.
we still have to think about, well, this might be a conversation for another day or when legal counsel is in here. Community spaces do have to, not all governmental or school district community spaces allow things like alcohol or, but those are things that have to be discussed. Some do, right? Some do for specific events, but but I love the idea. It could hold a gala
It
of
could hold
250 people plus the welcome center and all that kind of stuff.
It could hold.
So on that level, it could. You just have to also think about how we want community use space, and also how, not only with, we've already talked a little bit about security, but also kind of what is the spirit of a school building, and what do you have there, and what do you exclude from there as well. But those are great. It's fun to dream about those things, right? And to think about those things, and that's that poke hole and thing. Yeah, we could. Yeah, but maybe we do something that's a fundraiser that's more, my favorite thing, coffee centric. Coffee centric, or there's other things you could do
Turkey bingo.
when you're at gatherings. So great idea though. But that's the kind of thing we hope people bring forward, right? Like, hey, we do. It's Librarian Independence Day. We want to do this gathering. Here's a space we can go to. Here's what's going on. We want to have a space we can go to. I think those, Tanya, are exactly what you would hope people would bring forward, and then you get to work with them on, yeah, you could do that, and you might want to eliminate this little part of your plan, right? That would be a different community center, not this building.
Well, and we know, Dr. Heidel, I apologize, we're a little bit beyond our time, so we still want to show you what this thing could actually look like. So we're going to go relatively quickly through some pictures. You have them in your deck there, but wanted to kind of walk you through. So I'm going to hand it back to Lene. The first view here is our site diagram. So this is what the physical property is intended to look like.
Yeah, thank you. The features here, you can tell that those of you who've been to the site, it's sandwiched between Yates and Zane. This is showing the building a little closer to Zane, which was a high priority for the district to have that frontage there. But you can start to see the parking evolve. Again, applying parent drop-off with a separate bus loop, which is exactly how your elementary school is designed as well. Having green space for fields. You can see a lot of that community garden type of development and interactive space that just hugs up to the building as well. Show you a little bit, again, this is the floor plan. We won't go through it in great detail, but you can categorize that blue area as your pre-K type of space, and then the yellow gold is more of your ECFE, your phased community kitchen. The green wing is all of that American Indian makerspace library museum.
Important to note, all the red dots are different places where we can segment the building from a security standpoint. So we have different points where we can control things. And as Lene had mentioned before, we can turn the front entry into a secure front entry if we want. We can also have it a little more open and welcoming. We have the flexibility to do either at any time we would like to change it, depending on what's coming in.
And John, the size of that welcome center space, can you share that? with
The
us?
welcome center, sure. In the middle here, that area is about 4,000 square feet. So if you imagine a normal, say, 3,000 square foot home, that easily fits within that welcome center. We'll show you some pictures of it where you get to see a much better idea of what does that feel like versus just here. It kind of just looks like, oh yeah, it's just a little connection spot. I can get across it real fast. There's a little bit more to it. And this is the upstairs. Go ahead.
Yeah, on the upper level, you can see that there's an open below component to it, but the goal is again those academic enrichment areas with some flexibility to go from small group to a little bit larger group. So the beauty of how this group planned this building is that there's that flexibility of more intimate settings of 10, 20, 30 people, open it up to 60 or 100, or go back into the professional development training space for a couple hundred in that area as well.
And the production kitchen that's on the main floor here is designed so it can be multi-use as well. So it's a production kitchen. It's also the kitchen to serve the littles in the pre-K program, so they can come up to a counter and get their meals and go. And it also can cater to events up here if we need it to.
We'll just kind of go over real quick. We're going to get into the design here now, and just some of the wonderful things that the core planning group talked about is, and we really worked on as a design team, was tying into the natural topography. We understand that we've got an urban environment, but we want to include site, green space, nature, so you can see a little bit of that, some of the influences on activating those outdoor spaces, some influences on color. The real key component to the design here was the team really had said we want all cultures can connect with nature, and so that's something that is universal, and that's really something that should be influenced in the design here. So you can see natural local materials, limestone, wood, very natural, welcoming, warm, calming type of materials and finishes. So here we're going to start getting into some images. So I don't expect you all to remember the site plan, but if you're standing in the parking lot upon your arrival, this would be the view that you see here. And what I just want to point out is that you see your main entrance on the right-hand side. You see that two-story component there where you have your professional development, meeting space, academic enrichment, and then to your left you have your separate entrance for the pre-K component there. This is a closer view of what that front entry can look like. Again, you can see a lot of those natural materials, native grasses, a patio gathering space at the front door, a lot of natural light in windows, very inviting. A little bit of a closer view of what that would look like there too, the stone and the wood.
And I will point out as we go around the building here, we've mentioned there, you saw on the site plan that there were very distinct kind of garden and community circle areas. Those are not represented here on purpose. They're held out so you can see the building itself. When we come back in February to show at a regular board meeting to ask you to approve a bid on the project, we'll show more detail that includes that.
And the intent for this site development is really to invest in the construction project with the more permanent features. And then all of our users have talked a lot about the gardening opportunities and influencing some of those spaces as well. So some will be left ready for active involvement. This is if you're on Zane and you're looking at the building coming from the south. You are looking at a lot of open natural light into that professional meeting space up top, and then providing a lot of glass and natural light into the classroom spaces that are down below. If you continue around the building, this is looking direct onto that professional meeting space that's up high. Some great views of the site from that area. And then on the right, you're looking at, this is just kind of wrapping around the building, that American Indian Ed component is down low. There's a maker space that opens up and connects to the nature, so that indoor-outdoor space can be very connected when the weather is right here in Minnesota. And then you start to see the pre-K wing and playground to the right. Again, this is just an overview of the interior materials. You can see a lot of the materials are reflecting that original color palette of representing nature, with tile, stone, carpet, etc. And these are a couple of views of what you'll experience at that front entry. So when you walk in, one of the Building a Better Future commitments from your team was making sure that we see some multiple languages in the buildings, and so making sure that we've got that welcome component you see on the left. Once you get into the building, an opportunity for a greeter. You can see some of the display areas for some of the regalia that was talked about earlier, so that culture component can be on display throughout the building.
One of the things I would state, especially if you're looking at this, renderings, the signage in the renderings is just put up as a little bit of a generic, because we haven't had the conversation yet. So it's just there as the first representation of, we'd really like something that says welcome to all of our communities at the entryway. So Wold gave their first stab at that. We may choose to do something different. It's just to give you that idea. Just providing a space and a holding spot for it, and then we can choose to say, okay, this is what message we want displayed here.
And we'll just kind of zip through these. So this is the gala area, Chair Prince. This is the Welcome Center. So you can see that, again, using a lot of components here. Some of the functions are professional meeting, gathering for families, grabbing that cup of coffee, having furniture that you can move out and clear out this space and have a couple hundred people in there for an activity if you choose to do so. Again, connections to natural light in the site behind, the fireplace there, including some space that's designed intentionally for family engagement. We have multi-generational activities and experiences happening here. Display for all of the components that you might want to display, whether it's active or passive. The museum and library there, calling that out. Having a lot of visual access to space, a lot of glass for natural light. We just put in a couple of photos here of the pre-K flex open area. The beauty of this area is that a lot of these spaces have been designed in your other buildings as well. So always checking in with the team here, and Carrie's been involved in a lot of the planning groups, so a lot of consistency, whether it's the new elementary school that has these spaces on the west side of your district, or if it's this new building here that has the same programming on the east side. Those spaces will look and function very similarly.
One of the unique pieces here that we did add in that's slightly different is there's a display space for each individual classroom. So if you chose to do a more specific heritage here, you have the ability to display what that is, or highlight something there, versus in this classroom it's a little bit different direction. So each one of the classrooms has that ability, whether it's a heritage program or a wraparound program, and we leave that open to the program side to determine what should go in there.
I think we can just show a couple of images there. We can go through here. This is that UCFA corridor again, a lot of color, natural light. And this is upstairs now, so if you're at the center for professional development to be named, there's professional space outside. So if you all are there for a meeting, there's an opportunity to step into an acoustically sound space. If you need to do a Zoom or a meeting virtually, there's some soft seating. You can have breakout areas, and then there is that kitchen component that's behind that word wall there, so that you can serve and prep food up here for large events. This is a view of the large professional meeting space. We're actually showing it closed off, so it can be two spaces. You can see a room divider on the left. You can start to see that natural glass, so you can have that connection to nature if you're working in there all day. And this is a view of it having it open, so that you can see how the space will look and feel on the upper level of flexibility. I think that might be it. We welcome any comments or questions that you all may have.
Thank you. Board members, we are already 10 minutes over, but any questions? I know I have plenty.
I think my only comment or question, I don't even know if it's a question, but the emphasis on safety and security, and I know that like a welcoming front door for the building is important. But I think as a school district, safety has to be top of the line for us. And I do have some concerns based on how that desk was set up, that even just for that staff person, like what kind of safety is there set up for them?
What I would, I guess, respond to that is that's in the open version. So we also have the ability to not staff someone at that desk and say, now we're gonna turn it into a secure entry, you have to come in
Perfect.
with
Yeah.
Raptor in through the vestibule, just like you would in a traditional
Perfect.
elementary. This one's just designed so that depending on what is happening in the building, or say the heightened climate at the time, we can say, you know what, I think today it needs to be a little bit more secure.
But then for like the pre-K, it'll be
That
set up
always has a
permanently,
secure end too.
like the double vestibule almost, because we have the
There's a
vestibule
double
and
vestibule, and it
office.
has all of
Okay.
that, so you have the ability to do that function at the front door and at pre-K. You can engage
Yep.
the front door one if you
Great.
don't use it or not.
Thank you.
I appreciate the focus,
Yeah.
especially under the current times, and we've had a lot of conversations about what that looks like, what that feels like, and how can we be welcoming. If we know, hey, we're bringing in 200 of our own staff, we could probably open the front door. But if it's a open community event, or we're doing something that's more pre-K driven, maybe we're not gonna do that. And I think it's just important that whoever's the person ultimately in charge of the building be able to make the decision to say, or again, you know what, the climate's a little, people are a little edgy about this, let's make sure we're showing that we're a good, secure facility and be able to flex that way. We talk about fluidity of the building a lot.
Yeah.
So we
And as
have
long as
that
it's there and we
ability.
don't have to come back and build it back in
Correct.
to cost us
Yeah.
more, that's the primary question I had.
Great question.
So on the security question I have, that was the same concern I had throughout the presentation as well. That's not to say that y'all haven't had plenty of meetings to talk about it, but just as I'm looking at it, there are some logistical things kind of stressing me out about it. I know you said that there's more to come on the outside, but I was just curious about the play spaces and how secure those are from the public or just adults that may be accessing the facility.
Okay. Yeah, great question. So we know the playground itself is fenced off and secure from a standpoint of these are the littlest kiddos, so we want to make sure that they're not running loose. It is part of what's on that facility today is a community walking path. So the city has helped pay for that to go in, and we're going to end up integrating that in other walking paths into the exterior part. But every doorway, the floor that you're seeing in there, every entryway has an additional level of security built into it. I won't get too super far into the detail of why, but kind of going back to the security conversations that we've had recently, there's multiple layers built within the building itself. The trick for us, and being a little bit new, is that community space outside and how that's used and how we choose to manage that. Whether it's classes coming outside or a community event outside, I think there's some learning curve and some more conversation around how we actually operationalize and manage that. But a great question, and something we have to make sure we address.
On that same note, the lunch space or the community kitchen, how are the kids accessing that space to get to the counter?
So that is, the community kitchen is just a community kitchen. It's almost like a fax lab. It's not the part of the pre-K program. So there's also a production kitchen that's over on the receiving end of the building. That's the kitchen that is, there's a hallway where the pre-K students can come out, go around, we can open up a gate, and essentially they have a cafeteria style serving area, and then they're gonna either go back, I believe, Brian, tell me if I'm right or not on this, that most of the time with pre-K, we actually have them eat in their classroom. But there is a large motor or shared area that we could use as a cafeteria if we wanted to, just depends on furniture. But they would go get their food and come right back into their space, and that's still secure at that end of the building. That's not the public end. We can't, a production kitchen I can't open to the public. You have to have licensed food service staff only in it. That's why we have a production kitchen at one end and a community kitchen at the other end. It's much more for, as Dr. Bass was saying, an indigenous cooking class. That's what that kitchen's for. So.
And then the last question, the doors to ECFE and the pre-K spaces, are those glass doors?
I believe it can be.
They have a little glass in them. They aren't necessarily all glass, and I think the function can function the same, or you can lock them down. ECF, the vision there is it's going to be a little bit more open. Yes, those can be locked down, and there is a little bit of glass in there.
Just a little bit of glass. Okay.
So what we do in any of the entries, and we can do this on the interior as well, is it's an enhanced glass. So it's got some protection factor to it. Now, does that mean it's going to stop a bullet? No. But it will prevent you from breaking through if we've locked that door. Much like we employ similar things in other places in the district. The idea is to slow people down so our staff can make decisions to take care of what needs to be taken care of. So that's incorporated all over the building.
So that's the whole building, all the windows are that
I'm not going to say
enhanced?
all windows, I'm going to say
Okay.
entryways.
Okay, perfect. So interior entryways included, where you would have the safe entries?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I took over your question.
I think that was the last one.
Yeah, these are helpful thank you for adding some of we have vigorous discussions on this, right? So like one of the ways I think about this is it's kind of in between, well, it is going to be a school, but it's in between what we think of as a traditional school and a community center, right? When you walk into Maple Grove Community Center, you don't go through any security. There's no locked doors. You walk in and there might be a greeter there, right? And then you have free access to the whole space at any time that you want to, right? Because we're doing dynamic programming, we're kind of making in between there. Like you can see all the spots where we added, we're like, nope, these are totally locked down. And then I think the front entryway, this is good feedback because we were trying to find the sweet spot between, do you really want 400 people checking in one-on-one? Clearly here, when you walked in at the ESC, you didn't enter a secured entrance, right? You walked in, this is a community gathering space, the ESC for board meetings, things like that. So we're trying to do, and we're kind of, I don't know what's the right word, threading the needle, or however you want to say that. So I think these are helpful to us because we had, there were some people on the team who wanted it to be more like you would experience, between 7:45 and 2:30 at the high school.
Yep.
And others who said, no, this is a community center. It's not welcoming to do that at a community center,
I
right?
do
So I think we've done in
yeah.
between with the kind of, especially the pre-K programming.
For sure.
On both ends, I think that was the right,
I think
my
as a
opinion is a good
school
compromise.
district,
Mhm.
and as we're, kind of relabeling the school, since the priority is on that BPK
Mhm.
academic portion, that we do have to prioritize, and the ECFE prioritize
Most
that
definitely.
safety and make sure that that's
Yeah.
what we work around, not the other way around, because,
Right.
you're coming into a child's space, and that's who we have to protect as
Yep.
a school district.
And it's
Awesome.
important to note
Yeah.
that this building, from a design standpoint, is designed the same way we design a school. And that entire BPK area is also a storm shelter, so it is walls that are this thick concrete. So just
Yeah.
one of those added perks of storm shelter is it's super, super secure. You're not gonna break through that block wall with any ease.
I also don't love this idea of a staff member being able to make a call about the fluidity of security on any given day or any given time. And I don't know what that actually looks like on a day-to-day, if we have certain hours where it is more secure or whatnot, but what I don't want is for something to happen, the worst to happen, and it was on a day where we were more fluid or flexible. So that's, yeah. So I see what you're trying to do, and it's coming together, but yeah, just some of the thoughts.
If we need to have a particular security briefing on it, like we have had where it's not open to the public, we, I think, can do that. Given what we've discussed as a district, I'm confident that the aesthetics are not in conflict with safety and all of the things that you outlined. So if we need to have more information to the board to get everybody to that comfort level, I think we could do that. And I think we entrust site leaders to make many decisions in our school buildings, and so I'm confident that the site leader who's put in authority over the building would have the protocols and decision process on the details of secure entrance.
Yeah, and thank you all and this is why doing this presentation again, right? So
Exactly.
that we can do more intercession work again,
Yeah.
based on the feedback we're getting tonight. And so we're, we hear you, and we have been debating this, right? And what it really looks like and how it might feel, so
And it's
thank
not
you.
an easy answer, I'm sure.
No, it's
Yeah.
not, it's a little, yeah, well, it's easy in that, yes, we're gonna make sure it's safe and
Mhm.
secure for the people who come there, that's easy.
Mhm.
And then the hard part is, well, what does that look like when, how welcome does the community feel if you're trying to make it a community space, right? How logistically does that work when 250 adults are coming in for
Yeah.
professional development day while there's, that's why we kind of tried this wings,
Mhm.
be able to lock down certain wings while people come in, like, so that's why we tried to do this, but that's why we're doing this, so we could get the feedback on your initial reaction, like,
Yeah.
ooh, I love it, or ooh, I got a little
My-
uneasiness, that kind of thing.
My previous district had it, so the previous
Yeah.
district had, one whole other side was the community area, and the whole other lockdown side was pre-K and early childhood,
Yeah.
and no one went past and got in those
Yeah.
areas, so.
These are good.
And it's important to note that the theory and idea we have so far, until you put it into operational practice, there's gonna be some hurdles. And we gotta figure out what the right way to do that, but until we build it, we don't.
And the fear of being obvious, the benefit of building it up from brand new, and to benefit from all the enhanced security and things that are at our disposal now that wouldn't necessarily have been had we not made that decision or used the board to approve it. I think it's also going to help direct and make this a very safe space for us.
So I think it's phenomenal. I think the opportunity for enrichment and academic programming there is clear. So then it's a matter of, once we're up and running, making sure we fulfill that promise that is what we're doing there, and that we can see the benefit to our students from it, in addition to some of the community. But the opportunity to bring in other community groups, I think about mentorship, I think about different organizations that can serve multiple ages of students there. It's huge for the opportunity. An interest I have after this meeting at some point down the road is to understand a comparison of like the operational budget. So did we change the mix at all from moving from Crestview to now this building? Does it take anything out of our general funds? I'll be interested in that, not go do something right now.
We did start gathering, Tanya. This is like step C on steps A through Z. We did start gathering potentially like what level of staffing might you need there, custodian, site leader. We started putting that together so that we could, the goal would, I think, be to at least have that mocked up a bit by the time we get to kind of February, the initial budget cycle, so that, because we're going to need to bring things forward to say, here's how much money was previously spent at the Crestview site on an annual basis. Here's what we think we're going to need to operate this particular building. What does that look like for the budget? So thank you. We're literally like step B or C on A to Z steps. So just
I'm guessing
started
there's
doing
like
that.
community ed fund versus general too.
Yeah,
so,
but
Yes.
how we're gonna do it all. Yeah.
I think it's excellent, and I think it really aligns with kind of where we wanted to be, and I think we had this opportunity to, pivot and rebuild or build brand new, and I think we're there. I mean, I'm really interested in just like how we partner with our communities, and I think we talked about that in January, like the intentionality around our mission and our vision and our values, and ensuring that whoever comes into that space aligns with that and their value. We have the values and the mission that we're trying to achieve. I love what you shared about Eric, what he said about just connecting RCT. I mean, that it's so important. I think about Brooklyn Park and their like tech and innovation district that the mayor wants, and just like how can we, really align so our kids can just unleash their brilliance, reach their fullest potentials, and their families, and continue that in that spirit and that aspiration. I think, and it looks just amazing. Like it's something that our community can be so proud of, and really meets to where we want to go. I hope Freedom Schools. I mean, I was way down there. I'm like, please let Freedom Schools come back. And I'm always gonna say, I know we talked about the pre-K, VPK, but I mean, I'm a huge advocate for, I like love to have like Native American and Hmong and everything. I do think we really need to also focus on our African American
Yeah,
students.
that's what we're bringing up
So,
even more. is for-
I know that's not what this is about, but you know, when we get to that point, I'm going to continue to advocate for that too. So, but yeah, thank you so much. This is, and the work and the like going back to the community. I know that wasn't part of the plan always, but thank you for doing that. It looks awesome.
Thank you.
Just one quick question. So we were talking about, you know, the parent, student, and do we have like numbers of how many people we kind of reached or kind of came to these feedback sessions and stuff?
For the community input session, or all of the groups that we were talking about?
I think just everything, yeah.
Just everything. So the core planning group was a group of 15 to 20. And we met with them 6 or 7 times. They toured, they helped with the diagram in general. So that was a great cross-representation of age and whether you're a community member, parents. A lot of people wear multiple hats, which was really cool. And then the users again, I think we had 2 rounds. Those groups range anywhere from probably 6 to 15 people. And I think there was a list of about 15 of them. We met twice.
About
So
100 to 150 of
we're at
those.
a well over, like, people touched throughout the process or connected to is well into the hundreds.
To like we did a thought exchange in the spring, I think it was, of 2024, and then when we decided, that was before we decided on the rebuild, and then we shared once again an opportunity, but we had 249 participants on that, and 97 thoughts, 2,000 almost, reacting to other people's thoughts, so, and that was shared prior to.
You said 2,000 reactions?
Yeah.
Okay.
And once it opens, I think our feedback will go through the roof. Because, once you actually get to be in a space and interact with the space, we'll make sure that we have, just like we do in all of our programming, whether it's participation surveys, different things, what did you experience? Even when you go to like the Minnesota Historical Society and you can vote on little things. They have there's interactive things in all sorts of community spaces that you can ask for input as you open it up, because we're going to want that input right away, because although I do think primarily these features will be there, I think we're feeling good about the programming that we're recommending, but I'll also we're 100% open to what people will share with us once they experience the space, right? Even Tanya's like, whether it was for real or a joke to say, what about the gala? Well, I don't know. That's what people are going to do when they walk into the space.
I can figure it a gala here.
If everyone puts in a $100 donation to start, I'll explore it.
Stop.
To you, Brian.
To the foundation.
Thanks for clarifying.
But thank you for your input. I know I can speak for the whole team. This is pretty exciting. There's not for me. I'm dreaming about the day we get to do the opening. I really am. I've been here 15 years. This is pretty cool. This will be a crown jewel on that Zane Avenue. It just will.
And then you have the new community center as well.
Yeah, and
Teen center.
And then the teen center opening.
The teen center.
This is really cool, you guys, for the community to have these two things kind of serendipitously. They're happening, kind of coinciding with one another. It's really cool. It's pretty awesome that we all get to be a part of the team that's going to make this happen, right? We're going to get to say we're part of the team that did it, and the community's going to love it. So I just wanted. That's just how I feel about it today. So it's really fun to see this and see these drawings. Pretty cool.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yes.
Our Vision Card A group is like,
We're like, we're gonna actually be done for the night. No.
Not bumping up.
Anthony, take Starbucks order.
All right, I gotta go. So I'll get this way.
checking their. everyone's getting settled.
Do we miss? Oh, okay, all right, we'll make sure we get those.
We really literally went and got a bucket of chocolate. I said the board needs chocolate.
There's a whole tub we brought in.
A bunch of sweet tooth.
Oh, boy.
I know.
These are my guilty adults here.
Yeah, exactly. You have to.
All right, so we'll go ahead and get started with our next group. And so I'll have Dr. Brian Bass introduce your presenters on monitoring report A, please.
Thank you, Dr. Howell. Good evening, Vice Chair Brooks, Chair Prince, members of the board, cabinet, and community members. It is exciting to bring the final vision card forward from the 24-25 school year to you this evening. Our outcomes for this evening is to learn about and discuss the data measures for the high priority initiatives for strategic direction A and explore the enhanced alignment between strategic priorities, system strategies, and the measures that show implementation fidelity and impact. So I'll say that one more time. So the alignment between the strategic directions, priorities that you all have helped us set, what the strategies are that we've invested in as a system, and the measures, the metrics that show our implementation fidelity, so what adults are doing, and then the impact that's having on student outcomes. So just to walk through that in case you didn't get a chance for the podcast. It's quite repetitive in the podcast. So just a reminder, vision cards serve as critical data points toward the realization of the mission for our students, staff, and families. Vision cards measure the district's success in achieving our strategic directions. They provide the data to support and assess progress toward our mission and vision, and vision cards set the ongoing district goals for performance and continuous improvement. So at your seats, you have the latest hot off the presses strategic priorities document for 25-26. Thank you, Kay, and your team for the graphics and really getting that magnifier visible in the graphics. So thank you so much for you and your team's efforts around that. So let's look at this from left to right. So along the left side, you'll see the mission, vision, core values that you all have set. In the center is the continuous improvement magnifier wrapping around the 4 strategic directions, A through D. And so you'll recall in June, we proposed to reframe strategic direction E as a continuous improvement, to have a continuous improvement lens with it that we want to apply to each of the strategic directions. So our mindful critical question for the magnifier is at the bottom of the document. How do our continuous improvement cycles and processes help address and eliminate disparities and inequities in achievement, which is to move our mission forward and to show increased outcomes academically. Along the right side, you'll see the 3 C's that you have heard Dr. Howell mention quite a bit: consistency, connection, and coherence. So just wanted to walk through that document. So that will be distributed to all of our learning leaders, and they'll be in buildings in the next couple of weeks. And at this time, I'll hand it over. I probably should have started with introduction, but I don't know. So let's introduce the dream team here from left to right as you're looking at them. Our Director of Student Services, Honey Burston. Our Director of Learning and Achievement, Dr. Jill Kind. Our Director of Educational Equity, Dr. Michael Walker. I feel like I'm introducing a starting lineup for an all-star game. Right? Yeah, it's our workout song.
Number 1 in your heart.
Last but not least.
Point guard. We need the nicknames too.
Jack of all trades. So I'll hand it off to Dr. Jill Kind at this point.
We were just discussing what our walkout songs were.
Yeah.
And the
Awesome.
order we should go.
Yeah.
So good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us tonight. This is just a reminder that this is our system strategy snapshot for strategic priority A. And this came out of a partnership with Educational Resource Strategies that works with districts across the country to assess the impact of their system strategies on positive outcomes for students. This visual is strategic direction A. We're going to go into it more throughout the presentation. And this would be strategic direction A, but with the continuous improvement magnifier for E2. Again, this is just a reminder, you've seen this a couple of times, that what we talk about when we talk about priority, it's the most important focus within a strategic direction. what our expected outcome is, what's the goal, what strategies are we going to use to accomplish this goal, how will we monitor progress along the way, the implementation measure, and how will we measure the impact of the strategies. So let's dig into strategic direction A, which is create a safe, welcoming, and inclusive learning environment that foster global curiosity, belonging, innovation, and achievement. That high-level overview of our highest priorities to implement the conditions that respect and value each and every scholar's race, culture, and identity. And our expected outcome is to increase students' sense of safety, belonging, and inclusion. The two strategies highlighted here are Tier 1, social and emotional learning curriculums, and PBIS, positive behavior intervention supports. One process measure is the tiered fidelity inventory, and one of our outcome measures is to increase in non-exclusionary disciplinary actions. So, looking at priority A1, our strategies, as I mentioned, we have our Tier 1 social and emotional learning curriculum in elementary, that is Harmony, and at secondary, grade 6 through 12, that is Character Strong. We also have positive behavior intervention supports that each school has in place, and our district behavior specialist program are our main strategies. For our social and emotional learning our curriculums, one process measure that's being developed, which is why it is in the purple color, are learning walks. These are non-evaluative visits to classrooms to determine what additional learning adults need to implement the SEL curriculum with fidelity. So they're just quick check-ins. A process measure for PBIS is Tiered Fidelity Inventory, which is a survey of schools that schools take to monitor their implementation of PBIS. And for our district behavior specialist programs, we have quarterly data reviews. We have 5 outcome measures in this priority. We're an increase in non-exclusionary discipline actions, 92% of students maintaining their federal settings. We have student stakeholder surveys, the scales of belonging, help, and trusting adult, the family stakeholder survey, and the equimetric survey. I'm going to turn it over to Director of Student Services, Sunny Bursman, to talk about the District Behavior Specialist Program.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I'm very excited for the opportunity to be here and share with you about our District Behavior Specialist Program, specifically because it has been so successful. It's something that we really pride ourselves in within our department, and the work that's been done to assist students in maintaining their federal setting, which is one of the goals we have within our Student Services department as a part of our operational plan. Federal setting refers to the amount of time that students spend in their mainstream or general education classroom. The federal goal for school districts is that students are spending at least 80% of their time in the general education classroom. And that is true for the vast majority of our students. But we also have students that are spending up to 100% of their time in special education classrooms based on their unique needs. We also have students that access services in other settings such as intermediate district 287 based on their unique needs. So students across the spectrum. But one thing that we look at is where our students are falling across that spectrum, and then we create goals around that so that we are always moving towards having our students in the classroom as much as possible. Not only is this law, it's best practice, research continues to support that inclusion is beneficial, not just for students with disabilities, but for all students. So our District Behavior Specialist program, we employ 5 teachers and 4 ESPs that support students and teams when a need arises that is beyond the capacity of the staff that are in the building. And so we'll get a referral to this team, and these specialists will go out and provide a unique and heightened level of support. This can be support directly to a student and directly surrounding one specific student, or it can be for a program, or it can be for a group of staff. This past school year, our DBSs were called upon 76 times. 39 of those were to provide direct support to individual students and the teams supporting those students, and the other times were to support programs. Sometimes this is because we have a brand new teacher in a program and they need some support to get that program set up and functioning for all students in the space. Our goals with our DBS program specifically is that students maintain their federal setting.
So if we're supporting a student that right now is in their general education classroom about 50% of the time, our goal is that when the support comes in and we provide these wraparound services, that student continues to access their mainstream classroom 50% of the time, or increases. And that is a lofty goal, considering we're typically called in when we're kind of at a level of crisis, of high need. And I'm very pleased to share that due to the skills of these staff and the structure of this program, that 88% of students last year that received support from DBS, from a DBS, maintained their federal setting. They did not need to be further removed from the class in order to gain skills. They were able to gain those skills in their right where they were, and which is a goal of ours that this program has been meeting, and why we continue to invest in it. I do want to highlight one change that we made this past school year. We added a general education DBS. So previously we had been only servicing students that were on IEPs. We used some of our CEAS funding, or our coordinated early intervention funding, to add a general education DBS this past school year, which was very successful. They were able to work with students in prior to them needing or receiving any special education services, and either delay the need for an evaluation because we were able to make interventions successful, or prevent the need for an evaluation altogether, or if an evaluation was needed. It was really starting off with a lot of great data to minimize the level of service a student needed within special education. So a great investment that will continue into next school year. Yeah, so Brian said I get to talk about inclusion, and I was like, you're gonna have to hold me back. How gonna go? But yes, thank you for the opportunity to share that.
Can I just add, like, so I mean, I'm not obviously in the school day to day, but I mean, so what does that look like though? Like, so if somebody is, like, a student is, what's happening that what would trigger that calling this team?
Yeah, so there's a few different, and this isn't a crisis response team when we, like, that, you know, there's one particular incident and then we are coming in as the crisis response team. It's more so that a student is demonstrating either new behaviors that we haven't previously seen, and we can't, as a school team, with the resources that we have on site, figure out why that's happening and how to stop it, or it's a level of intensity that we'd like it to stop right away. So those things trigger a referral. The DBS usually comes in and does some observations, and then they're going to make recommendations around staff professional development, if there need to be changes to that student's IEP or behavior support plan, and then general accommodations. So I was looking through some of our referrals to prepare for this, and I found a few good examples, but we had a student that was trying to leave the elementary building. Was a student with autism and was nonverbal. And so every day, they were just trying to go home. Not a safe walk. And so the team was struggling with, how do we keep this kid in the building safely? Like, we're very concerned. And so DBS came in, did observations, and was able to make recommendations of accommodations that weren't already in the plan. So they put large visual stop signs on all the exit doors and did some teaching around that with the student. And they also came up with common language that not just the small team working with that student knew, but every staff in the building was taught. If you see this student moving quickly in the hallways without an adult, this is what you say every single time. And those two things really worked for that student. And the team, the case manager, this was one of their 17 students. And so they're doing everything they can, and sometimes we need a little more.
Is that helpful?
That's very helpful. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much.
Now, Amy Callis, and we'll come talk about non-exclusionary discipline practices.
Yes, we heard, thank you for having me here this evening. We heard as one of our outcome measures is to increase in non-exclusionary discipline measures. And so before I get into what that really means in terms of language from state statute, I just want to revisit the last time that we were here talking about school safety with our 4 wonderful principals, sharing information, because really all of the things that they were talking about were really referencing what is under the umbrella of non-exclusionary discipline practices, all the ways they're trying to provide different levels of support and kind of the unique needs of each of those scholars and when they become more dysregulated. So where that really comes from is, one, our belief that if students are in the classrooms, that's where they're learning, and that's where then academic achievement improves, and they also benefit from social emotional learning. So that also comes from, in 2023, there was change in state statute language. So it gave us direction in 2 different ways. This particular slide speaks to the information around K through 3. And that's where it gave us direction that we are unable to suspend students in K through 3. So that simply means that we are not able to suspend a student for a full day and send them home for a full day. If there is a student that comes to school and is having a really tough morning and they're maybe exhibiting some really challenging behaviors, and the administrator determines that they just really need almost like a timeout, they certainly can call the family and ask them to come and pick up, because that's a day or less. So that we get an administrative dismissal. That is allowed, but what we can't do is then tell the family you are not able to have the student come back the next day per our direction, because that would be a full day suspension. So that's what that looks like for K through 3. So then if you can recall, Principal Gibbs and Principal Branch really speaking to all those different ways they were giving examples and supporting scholars. Those are kind of what fall under that umbrella of non-exclusionary discipline. It's only used as a very absolute last resort. I think last year, as a result of some incidences, maybe we had 2 or 3 students at the elementary level, because of the very serious nature of what happened or the severity of it, that was a response. And really, we're trying to follow those 3 supports of really partnering with family and offering and providing community supports. Could be that we have a written safety plan in place, and leveraging, our collaborative teamwork, and thinking about, are there other supports, and partnering, especially if a student receives services along the lines of what Sunny just spoke to. Are there different ways we need to leverage services or through due process, or again, different things that Sunny referenced and supports. So that is specifically what the statute speaks to in K through 3. The statute also speaks to K through 12, which these are all the general supports that you heard really reflected in action from our principals last meeting. So I'm not going to read through all of them. I'll just let you take a minute, because we really did speak to these more in depth, so I don't think I need to repeat through all of those. And then just cites the actual statute if you'd like to revisit that. Go ahead. And then this is the last piece, just to really emphasize what that looks like. We kind of outlined the 3 different areas around K through 3. These are the different ways that if we say we're working with families, what does that look like? It could be a parent conference, it can be a phone call, it can be in collaboration with parents coming up with like a behavior support plan. When we're talking about writing those plans, it could be a learning plan. It could be that the student is removed during the school day for a part of the instructional period of time to help try to teach some of those behaviors and self-regulation. And then referring to needed services, again, we spoke to a lot of those, but those are pieces that we're really trying to leverage all those different aspects around supporting our scholars in K through 3 when, again, suspension is not allowed. So our principals do an amazing job of being really creative and working really hard with their teams to be responsive. And that just really specifies when we're speaking to this metric around non-exclusionary discipline, that gives you a better understanding of what we mean when we're using that language.
So now we're going to dig into some data.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, absolutely.
When it comes to expulsion, when is the last time we've ever expelled?
Not since I've been here.
Yeah, and so like when you say it's like the last resort, that is like everything else is totally exhausted. Because doesn't that would have to go to the board too?
Yes,
Correct.
you.
Okay.
You do it, Kelsey.
Yeah. I don't want to do that. No, but yeah, I just was.
Well, I guess my question is, because in kindergarten, I mean, we have kids like from 4 to almost 7, right? Is there a conversation about, hey, maybe, you know, is your child ready for kindergarten? Or do we redshirt or something like that? Is there those kinds of conversations with the parents and stuff?
So
As a
those
parent who
conversa-
redshirted a couple, so.
So those are conversations, I would have to get more information for you, because when I'm supporting principals who are being responsive, you know, they're already in school and that decision has already been made, so I would need to have someone else speak to some of those conversations.
There wouldn't, I don't think though, is part of your question, I don't, there's not any process like, for instance, where we would say a pre-care wouldn't go to kindergarten. Do you know what I mean? Is that part of what you're asking? Like, do you ever consider if someone's ready for kindergarten? I'm trying to understand what you're asking a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's not really an expulsion, but it's a conversation still with the parents and caregivers, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, yeah.
The general philosophy is that it's not a child's job to be ready for school, it's our job to be ready to receive the child.
Preach, girl. Sorry.
All right, let's dig into some data. So the first measure we're going to look at is our equimetric survey. It's a climate equity review that includes 3 scales: diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's a survey that we engage in each year with an outside agency, and there are 9 scales, so we're groups of questions, and today we're going to look at just 3 of them. In 2025, a total of 1,097 staff members completed the survey for a response rate of 34%, which doesn't sound great, but it actually is pretty good. To each question, staff responded on a scale of 1 to 10. A response of 9 to 10 is strongly agree, and a response of 7 to 8 indicates they agree. Anything less than that is not included in this data. So this is just agree or strongly agree to each of these questions. Overall, in each year of the survey, inclusion had the highest rate of agreement at 73% for the last administration. The 2 statements with the highest level of agreement are: my organization actively promotes diversity within the organization at 78.6%. And in my organization, people are included regardless of background or experience at 76.4%. Additionally, this year, every question within these 3 segments of the climate equity review saw an increase in agreement. The next piece of data we're going to look at is the student stakeholder survey, which has been administered to most students in grades 3 through 12 since 2015. This indicator has 3 scales: belonging, help, and trusting adult. The table includes the percent positive, students responding yes always or mostly yes for each question on the scale. In the spring of 2024, a new survey scale was developed, so we couldn't compare to previous years. Accordingly, a new baseline and new performance levels were established for Vision Card A. This table provides the survey questions and scales in use for spring 2024 and 2025, along with the percent positive. The highest is increase between these 2 administrations is that I feel respected at school, from 68% in 2024 to 72% in 2025. We're going to go a little deeper now and look at just the student sense of belonging questions. And this first graph represents the scale disaggregated by race and ethnicity. The gray line is the average for this year's administration. The green dotted line is the average for over 6 years. All groups are at or above the green line for the 2025 administration, which represents the 6-year average. Asian, Black, and Hispanic, and multiracial students reported a greater sense of belonging in 2025 than in 2024, and all students are above the district average. This graph identifies students who receive free and reduced price meals, multilingual services, special education services, and female and male students, and how they responded to the sense of belonging questions. No student group in this data set reported a decrease in their sense of belonging from 2024. All student groups are above the gray line, which means they are above the district average. Lastly, in the sense of belonging data set, this is data disaggregated by elementary, middle school, and high school. Students at each level are above the green line, and all groups report an increase in sense of belonging from 2024. The next set of data focuses on the extent to which students feel they have support they need to be successful in school. For the health scale, there was less variability between student groups, which means students report similar levels of access and help. And all student groups are at or above the district average. White and multiracial students responded more positively in 2025 across all groups. This graph identifies students who receive special education services, multilingual services, free reduced price meals, and male and females. All student groups saw an increase, and each student group is above the gray line, with male and females above the average of the 6-year average of the green line. Again, this graph shows the data disaggregated by elementary school, middle school, and high school. Students in each level reported an increase in having access to the supports they need, and middle school has surpassed the 6-year average. Moving on to another scale within the student survey is trusting adult. For the scale of trusting adult, Black students in 2025 reported higher levels of having a trusting adult than in previous years, and were still below the district average. All other student groups were above the district average. Looking at students who receive free and reduced price meals, multilingual services, special education students, and male and female, all student groups met the gray line, and females reported higher than the 6-year average of feeling that they have a trusted adult at school. And lastly, looking at this data by elementary, middle school, and high school, students in middle school and high school both reported increases in having a trusting adult, while elementary remained stable. The 3 levels are above the district average, and you can see that middle school is super close to meeting the 6-year average. And as I think about the DPAC presentation from May and the concerns around middle school, this is really a positive thing for our middle schoolers. The last metric for this indicator is the Family Stakeholder Survey. Safe, welcoming, inclusive learning environment scale. So we're just focusing on that one scale from the Family Stakeholder Survey, which was last administered in the spring of 2024. It's an every other year survey. There are 8 questions on this scale, which you can see on the screen. The first set of data we'll look at disaggregated by race and ethnicity, with the exception of Hispanic families, which saw a decrease in positive responses to having a safe, welcoming, and inclusive learning environment. All groups saw an increase. Most notable are American Indian families reported a feeling more safe, welcoming, and inclusive learning environment. The next graph represents students who receive free and reduced price meals, EL or multilingual services, special education services, females and males. All families reported more positive experiences, with all groups above the district average, the gray line. And this last graph depicts the same types of questions with responses by levels. In this survey, we asked about early childhood as well. Elementary, middle school, and high school families responded more positively than they did in 2021, 2022, the previous administration. Middle school is still significantly below the other 2. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Bass.
So as we did with the other vision card presentations, we wanted to allow time for you all to have time to process and to provide us with any questions, thoughts that you have. And we offered these 2 questions to stimulate the conversation. We previously scaffolded this as giving you all some individual time, 3 to 5 minutes to jot down your thoughts, to look at some of the graphs to see what stood out to you. Did we, as this first question, do the measures clearly communicate our progress? Are we being transparent about the things you want us to be transparent about? And then what do you feel could strengthen our community connection? Meaning, what other pieces of information would the community be interested in us making more transparent, more visible? Is that helpful? In terms of, okay. So let me be quiet. You all look like you're ready to go. All right. So we'll put the timer on 5 minutes, and we'll come back in 5 minutes, and then we can stay in large group, or if you want to have small group first and come to large group, we can decide it at that point. You want to stay in large group, or you want to go? small groups first?
Just share.
Small group? Small group,
Sure.
2 of them?
All right, so we're gonna go 3 and 3.
Mhm.
Take another 5 minutes to talk through. Okay, that's at the timer. Or you can see where you're at, you can share out where you're at, whatever.
Share where we're at.
Yeah.
Well, and it's always good to see the say what so I don't remember having to see that.
All right, so this is our first of the 2 pauses. We just have a few more slides in the E magnifier realm after this, and then we have one more pause. But we definitely want to hear your thoughts about the alignment, the measures we've selected. So I don't know who wants to jump in first to share. That would be great. We'll take notes here.
You guys can go.
So we did have some, obviously the middle school piece,
Yeah.
but we know we're working on that,
Yeah.
and really intrigued to see how AVID is going to impact that in the next one.
Can I say one thing about the middle? One of the things we talked about doesn't really have anything to do, I don't think, like necessarily with this, but some of our middle schools are really starting to do like kind of like the PTO versions of like, and I wonder, because you have all these parents super involved and engaged at the elementary school, right? And like the teachers and principals, they know everything. Then you go to middle school and you don't as much, But like I wonder with like BMS, and I know Maple Grove Middle, they've just over the last couple of years started these like PTOs to like get more engagement and like kind of more of that sense of belonging for families, which I think just then kind of bleeds into their kids. So I'm like wondering if at some point there's some correlation there as those programs strengthen, because they try to do a lot of community, the dance and the middle school stuff to kind of build, and I've seen that more and more the last few years since I have so many kids in our district.
Do you want to speak to the goals for the big goal for around family engagement from
our department?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
I think that relates exactly what you
It
said.
definitely does.
Yeah.
So one of our things as our operational plan is we are focusing on how do we be more connected to families and community partners. And so for our department, we have an overarching goal for the Department of Education. I think that each area is having a SMART goal that is connected to that, of what they're going to actually do to try to better support or connect and partner with our families. To your point, we know that as students get older, parents' participation starts to decrease a little bit, except for around like events.
Right.
So they're there for like sporting events and band events and those sorts of things and plays. They will show up for those, but sometimes around like parent-teacher conferences, you start to see that decrease. And so we're trying to figure out what can we do differently to keep that level up, or do we have to change our way of thinking of saying, what does engagement look like at this level for this age group? Because it may be we need to engage differently with our families. And I'll just speak candidly from my own personal life. It's 6 kids growing up. So as I got in high school, my mom, I ain't coming to those parent-teacher conferences anymore. I got to go to the younger siblings who are in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. And so that parents start to try to have to make decisions. So depending on what their family structure is, that could also be an impact. You're doing okay. Let me make sure I get these ones that are younger off started and boosted into the system and understand.
Yeah, I mean, I love that, because I think that could be something we look at too, like as you kind of build that, like how, what does that look like with the survey around belonging, or, all these questions that we're asking.
From a data standpoint, we talked about that it's heavily reliant on perception, and there's not objective data. We do have the Stop It, the racial harm protocol, what data around bullying reports, like what are the referral types, and now what we did connect that to is a question of up and out the board and community. So right now, what controls the community narrative about are there fights, are there bullying, like that's the community narrative. So what type of measures should we have in place to provide clarity about our schools that counteracts a narrative that's out there? So providing some more objective facts might be helpful so that we're having the right external perspective of what's happening in our schools.
We had quite a heated conversation around the role of discipline data and what story is discipline data telling us, and is it saying here's the thing we don't want, right? Because the board has talked about, like, so how do we present things in terms of what we stand for versus what we're against, right? So this was like, well, let's toss this out here and see.
Yeah.
But if you all feel that like there needs to be greater transparency of those pieces, but what's the story?
Go ahead. No, go
Yeah,
ahead.
what's the story that data tells in any given year?
Well, and we did talk about what might be external consumption versus internal consumption as
okay.
well. But that, we have to identify a problem to solve the problem, so we shouldn't be afraid of data. But to your point, we should have the balance of like, how are we promoting what's working, but facing some reality as to maybe things that are more difficult or challenging.
And I do think it would lend a lot of, give the school district a lot of credit in parents' eyes and in community stakeholders to say, we deal with these solid facts and this is what we're working with and this is why we implement these measures and this is how we handle them. Because the stories that the principals told last week were really compelling. I think if that was tied to those hard data points, it would bridge the gap for a lot of parents because they don't speak in educationese.
That's what we talked about too. It's like almost like humanizing the data. Like the data is solid, and then like how do you like your like story, right? Like that example. Like I'm just kind of like, okay, what does that actually in practice mean or look like? And when you told me, it clicked. I'm like, oh, okay, And I think that like that humanizing that piece will really help. Like just what you said.
Yeah, I think I was thinking the same thing. Where it'd be great if you could have like some kind of not executive summary, but just some kind of like here's the awesome points within the data. Here's the things we're aware of that are issues still that we're working on. Because this is just a lot, and it's awesome. But it's awesome. But you kind of have to dig through to find the awesomeness, like right?
Almost.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other?
There is some reality, though, to the consideration if we have data available in our district that other districts don't publish, that's a whole different narrative, too. But I'm just trying to think through, like, where do narratives come from, and how do we present facts so that those narratives that may be false are not dominating the story about our district. That's the thought process.
Well, and you feel like the squeaky wheel gets the grease or whatever that saying is. So it might seem like there's a perceived notion that there's a lot of issues in our district. Is that the situation? And I think it's like cloak and dagger. We don't really know. So even knowing at a board level what that would be really helpful as a board member as I engage with people and the decisions we make.
I think we do know. I think it's a matter of what's operational data that maybe we monitor versus what's vision card or what's publicly consumed data and what's the right threading of the needle, especially if other districts aren't publishing certain data points.
Okay. Super helpful. If there aren't any other points, we are going to pause again. So if there's
I think we just had a question about wondering if in the other vision cards, is there something around attendance? Because we were just saying that, when you look at like discipline, however you're talking about it. I mean, if our kids aren't showing up to school, there's already like a lack of sense of belonging, right? Like kids, like you're miss school for a week and then you come back and then it's like, I'm here, and then depending on the school, right? Like it probably, it just depends. Like, does that then equate to issues around behavior or kind of that lack of engagement? And so, like, how is that data considered in this piece?
So attendance is not part of any vision card, but I remember we talked about it when we talked about vision card B with achievement as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that we can talk about as we think about monitoring and or implementation data and opportunity.
And Brian, can you just remind me again, what is the percentage of students that participated, like of our total students in the survey? Do we have that number?
I think
I can get it after the presentation, it's just in another document.
Okay, I think that'd be helpful. Thank you.
And the staff, I think you gave the staff survey though, right? Could you put those in again?
34%, yeah.
Yeah.
Just the total
Yeah,
number.
that's helpful.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, good evening. So you all have seen this, the continuous improvement magnifier, and just remind us of our two questions: what ineffective procedures are creating disparities, barriers, and inequities, and then how do our continuous improvement cycles help us eliminate those disparities and inequities? And so when we look at these questions on the slide, it really helps us keep equity at the center of our improvement work, and so that's what we want to make sure that we're doing. And this push is to not only like identify what isn't working, but it's to transform those practices into systems that produce equitable outcomes, right? So we want to make sure that we're producing equitable outcomes, and that's how we're using this magnifier in this regard. So this next slide shows what our priority is. So apply evidence from multiple data sources to drive rigorous system improvement. And then we have a couple of strategies. One strategy is the implementation of the equity transformation cycle, and the other one is around site department leadership and coaching. And so you can flip to the next one. So when we talk about the equity transformation cycle, you all have seen this a couple times. And really what we want to emphasize here is just this is about the listening, the uncovering, right, the reimagining, and then actually moving into action. I'll just say, like earlier tonight, you heard Brian talk about them using this format. They may not have called it the equity transformation cycle. When we talked about going to the VPK interviews, like that was going to listening to the community, hearing what they had to say, and then saying, okay, so how do I take this back? Because once I was listening, I was able to uncover some things, and now I can reimagine how I'm going to use this space, right? And now the next part is we got to move to action. Right? And so that's part of some of the work that we have to do around this. And so we want our building leaders to really embed this in all of their systems within their site. Right? Obviously, right now, we're really focusing on the equity teams that they will have. So each school will have standalone equity team that they're using this with around their equity challenge. But hopefully, as we continue this process, they'll start to implement this in other ways so that this becomes a strategy that we use all the time. That it's not just with a quote-unquote equity challenge, right? Just like what you shared tonight. And the other piece, I just really want to make sure that, these strategies are just not aligned, but also we really want to reduce the inequities in this. And so if we really want to reduce the inequities in this, we have to be willing to really stop and slow down and listen a little bit. And I think you all heard me say this maybe last month or a couple months ago. Sometimes the listening is the hardest part, right? Because we may not want to hear what the students or the families have to say to us, right? And sometimes I'll just speak for myself here. When people say stuff, we make facial expressions and all those things, and that will sometimes shut people down of giving us their real, true, uncut, raw insight. And we actually need that insight. So the listening part to me becomes a really hard part. And then another area that we can really grow in is the reimagining. As we were doing this with data digs with building leaders and their teams, I asked, how many of us have been in education for so long, right? I've been in education for 20 plus years. Well, if I've been in education for that long, I'm conditioned a certain way around education. So it may be tough for me to reimagine what is possible, right? Which is why it's important for us to listen to those voices that don't typically have the opportunity to share their perspective, so that we can say, oh, let me see that a little bit differently, right? And then we all know about the moving. There's going to be a whole lot of barriers and obstacles in the way to move things. We got laws, we got just traditions and those sorts of things. So this is just really about how do we continue to practice this. And so the second strategy that we have on there, you go back to the back page, yeah. The second strategy that we have on here is really around coaching. And coaching leaders is really important to me. And the way I say this is that when we do big professional development, that's like to get people's throat wet and get interested in the idea. But in order to see real change, you have to do some individual coaching. And so this work around departments and site leadership coaching for us is really saying, how do we pull up alongside our building leaders, our department leaders, to be that thought partner with them along their journey around this equity transformation cycle? How are we posing those questions? How are we helping them put this work into action? Because if we don't, then it just becomes the regular cycle, right? The other thing is that we all have blind spots. And so typically we talk about being self-reflective, and we always wonder like, I should be reflecting on myself and what I'm doing and how I'm doing this. Well, if I got blind spots, I can be reflective, but I can still be perpetuating the same issues that I've always done because I don't have that other visual, right? Someone to help me see what my blind spots are. And this is where that coaching comes into play at, right? So now how do we have people that can pull up alongside you to help you see some of those blind spots that you may have so that we can do things differently for the students and families that we're trying to serve? Does that make sense of what I'm saying? Okay, so I want to make sure that that's making sense. And so the measures that we're using, we're doing like equity team charters, monthly equity team agendas, percentage of site participation in e-team seminars, and that sort of thing. And I want to slow us down around, so we brought in Shane, Saphir, and Joe Truss to really come in and work with our leaders around this. And the reason why it's important to work with our leaders, I'm going to be a counselor for a quick second. I bring it up all the time. That's my favorite job I've ever had in schools, is being a counselor. But you all hear about mirror neurons, right? Are you all familiar with mirror neurons? Many of us do it without even being aware of it. So sometimes we have people that are heightened, and then we like calm our voice down. We kind of like sit down and do these things to help the person either calm or get into a space where we can have a conversation or dialogue, right? So that's just one way to describe it. But we want our leaders to have these mirror neurons too, so their staff can see them being equity leaders. And so our work is really focusing on the leadership in those buildings to help them develop their skill set so they can permeate throughout their building based on their actions, based on their modeling of this process. And so when we think about, like I said, equity team charters, well, that is the why of what we're doing. And so as we're building these equity teams, how do we keep that at the center of what we're doing and who we are recruiting to be on these equity teams within our schools, right? The monthly equity team agendas, obviously this is a way for us to, again, measure to make sure that they're having these meetings, make sure they're staying connected, and what those topics are. And then percentage of the sites participating in e-team seminars. So throughout the school year, we'll have we have 4 sessions, but one is a review session for folks who are new to the equity team. And then we have 3 sessions that they'll come through throughout the year that we'll have Shane and Joe for 2 of those sessions, and then the 3rd or last session will be them kind of giving a report out around how have they completed this equity transformation cycle. And so that's going to be kind of our way of documenting, seeing where we're at, where we're going, and how do we get there. The last thing, kind of before I close, and I'm going to read this because I want to make sure I hit on some specific points, is like I want to acknowledge something that's really important, and that this type of work is not always easy to measure with traditional quantitative outcomes. I'm going to say that one more time. This work is not always easy to measure with traditional quantitative outcomes. Progress in this work often shows up as relationships. It shows up in the difference in filling up the culture and in ways that students and families experience school before it will ever show up in like tests or graduation rates, right? So I want to be really clear on that. So I don't want us to have unrealistic expectations on what we're trying to accomplish here. I'll tell a story, not as necessarily a story. There's a video that people may have seen that goes around about this guy trying to ride a backwards bike. Have you all seen this video? Mm-hmm. So basically, when I turn the steering wheel left, it'll go right. The tire will go right. If I turn right, it'll go left, right? And so he talks about his trials and tribulations of trying to learn how to ride this backwards bike. And he practiced every single day for 10, 20, 30 minutes. And it took him 8.5 months to learn how to ride this backwards bike, right? So now he had to unlearn how he learned how to ride a traditional bike when he was 6 years old or 5 years old or whatever. So it took him 8.5 months to unlearn that and to learn this new thing. Then, maybe like 4 months later, after he done rode this bike, he put into this like TikTok or something like, hey, somebody meet me here. I think he was in Amsterdam, the bike capital of the world or whatever. Hey, meet me here. I want you to see me record me to ride a regular bike down. So he got up there and he couldn't ride this regular bike. He couldn't ride it. He was falling off. He couldn't do it. But at some point, around 20 minutes or so, it clicked and he was able to ride this regular bike, right? And so the reason why I share that story or I want to explain it is that when we are trying to unlearn something, it takes us longer to unlearn it, right? Or learn this new strategy, which is the backwards bite. And so now I gotta be very intentional about that, right? But I can slip right back into my old ways in less than 20 minutes. So when we think about this journey, and the reason why I'm saying that we may not see the outcomes right away connected to tests and graduation rates is because this is a journey for people. This is why the coaching is really important. This is why the coaching is imperative, so that they have somebody alongside them that can help them continue to stay in that tough, difficult spot, to unlearn some of these things that have been embedded in our society, have embedded in us, that we all have to work on, right? We all have these biases. And so I just want to be clear, like that's what we're really attempting to do. And so some of the data points that you may be looking for initially may not show up that way, right? So I just want to be really clear on that. Anything else I want to add to that?
I thought you were talking about the READ Act there for a little
No,
bit.
that's not. No, that's not the READ Act. So again, I just want to say that in short, this work is about.
Let me
Oh, go
for a
ahead.
second. I think Chair Prince, you talked about when we were talking about continuous improvement, you have leading indicators and you have lagging indicators. And I think Dr. Walker's point here is that as we're really trying to, as you spoke eloquently too in the example, we're trying to pull up alongside and help leaders grow their capacity to see the things that they haven't been conditioned to see in their role and in our system. And so that's going to take some time, right, before that automaticity and that proficiency appears. So I wanted to.
I appreciate that. So that's pretty much. I was in there. Yeah, we closed up pretty much. I don't add anything else.
Dr. Bass, I have a quick question. Was there feedback, it's been a while, was there feedback from the board that led to this measure being developed?
The
where is this coming from?
The
percentage of site documentation and evaluation of the equity transformation cycle. Like, how did this become a measure is what I'm trying to figure out.
So so the task force, as we look at each of the strategic directions and then the priorities that we identified, we looked at strategies that would align to that priority and that strategic direction. And then from that point, we're like, okay, so what measures do we have? What adult moves would we want to see that would show that that strategy is being implemented with fidelity? Right, so that's how the process measures are selected. And the outcome measure would be, okay, so what's the impact that we want to have? Now, I would say this is probably a leading indicator and not a lagging indicator. Meaning that the more reps and confidence they have in completing the ETC and then receiving feedback on their execution of the ETC, the more that they're going to start building confidence and interrupting some of the patterns in their achievement data that they want to get curious about. So for example, 279 Online noticed in their achievement data last year that ML scholars, multilingual scholars, were struggling a bit. And so they invited the SDSs in from the ML department to work with their staff on elevation practices. Asked them to submit lesson plans that reflected that they were integrating these ML instructional strategies and then looking at the impact of that. So they chose. So they're using the ETC to identify a specific challenge in their building, and then they're going about interrupting it. So again, some of these pieces are hard to make visible, all the things that are happening along the way, but having documentation of that cycle will be super helpful for us. Does that get at it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think we can stay in large group unless you all want to take time to individual time. I mean, I know we're over by 20 minutes. Or do you want to just stay in large group if there's any thoughts or questions?
Just stay in large
Okay.
group.
All right.
Can I just ask a question, Dr. Walker? When you're talking about the coaching on strategies and like individual, who in the district, like who are you talking about is doing that coaching?
Yeah, so our department, so the Department of Education, after we have coordinators who pull up alongside each one of the building leaders. So we have two now. We have one position open, but they are split up. So one has secondary, and then the two have elementary split up in half. And so they have 8 sites or 9 sites that they're working with those specific leaders to pull up alongside in that that journey and that process, which again takes building a relationship with, right? Because I can't just come in and be like, I'm gonna tell you your blind spots, and probably not gonna work too well, right? So it's gonna take a little bit of time for them to build some relational capacity, relational capital with that leader to even get to that level of vulnerability with each other. So that's gonna take some time. That's why I want to be very transparent, is that this is not like an easy, you can just flip this switch and you're gonna get these numbers. No, it's gonna take some time because folks are not traditionally used to being vulnerable around that, and this is what we're asking them to do. And so we got to be very mindful about how we're building a relationship, how we're building those conditions, that this is coaching, this is not me pointing a finger at you, this is about how we all looking at the mirror saying, how is Michael Walker showing up today in my work? How is this impacting students? Is it positive? Is it negative? If it's negative, what the heck am I going to do differently to make sure that it's not negative and that it's positive, right? So we all are holding the mirror up to ourselves. Again, it's not pointing the finger, it's holding the mirror up to ourselves.
The other part you talked about was, so the very things that we're asking principals to facilitate in their buildings, our coordinators, right, within your team are actually engaging in these same cycles.
Yes.
Right, so that their expertise is emerging like alongside the leaders that they're working with. And then they also have reached out to you, and you've led some professional development for some of the departments.
School sites, and
right.
the partnership for departments and school sites. So yeah, it's a work in progress, but we're moving in the right direction, and so yeah, that's gonna be enough for us.
So the data conversation just, I think for me, has me thinking, I was just kind of Googling, what is the old adage of how much positive has to offset a negative? To your point about thinking about positive measures and what's public facing, what's board facing, what's internal management, just has me thinking about some of the data and how we review this kind of at a point in time, and we end up asking a lot of questions about, especially when it gets to the end of the year and we're like, well, these aren't the numbers that we wanted to see often, and they're going in the right direction. But I'm just wondering if we should be thinking about kind of how are we maybe as a board having various monitoring reports during the course of the year, so it's not like we get to the end and it all comes at once. So that's just one thing that's kind of surfacing, and then just maybe thinking of all the discussion we had tonight, maybe to take this in, but also I think we have to be careful about what we publish publicly, because there's one thing that can be perceived as transparency, but is actually creating a false narrative. So I want to be mindful of that through all of kind of the data reflection back, and maybe we just need to have some more conversation about what are the type of metrics we need as a board, on what frequency to kind of stay along tracking with kind of what's taking place, so it's not at the end of the year we're like digging into it and asking a bunch of questions that maybe could be answered by having something throughout the year.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think specifically reflecting on this last strategy and the outcome measures, I love hearing about your work, Dr. Walker. I definitely want more of that information. I'm feeling like this one feels heavily operational. Like it doesn't need to be like at a vision card level. I think what's missing for me, like it's nice to know like the number of coaching hours or the percentage of documentation, like those things are great, but like what comes from that I think is what's missing. Like what are we evaluating? I think that needs to be the outcome measure, and I feel like we're not quite there yet. So that's just where my mind is right now, and just figuring out if like this is the right place for us to receive this information, or can this just be a report from you at any given time, or an update in a work session, or whatever that looks like. But yeah, I mean, happy to hear about it. Thank you for all of your work. But just, yeah, focusing on the measures and what the vision card actually looks like.
But I guess I'd like push back a little bit on that, because at least for me, it helps me ground kind of like the underbelly of how we get to these outcomes that we're looking for. So I think it helps me understand like there is significant investment in our building leaders to ensure that they are able to meet the vision that we have in these cards, to say like this is the heart of what we're trying to do, and like and to kind of build that up. So I like really find value in it. I do agree, like I think that like since I've been back on the board again, I feel like these vision cards they're more digestible than they've ever been, and I think that has triggered us to be like, okay, so like what out of these cards will be helpful if it's like a quarterly, like even email to us to say this is like the progress. I think as a board we need to decide though, like we don't want to like put all this work on everyone either, so we have to like I think that like hone in on like what actually, you know, we would want to be able to like post about or say like, hey, look, or like for public consumption. And I think that's why these are really good conversations. We do breakouts and like you guys allow us the opportunity to ask questions, because I think it does get kind of even my wheels turning of like what data, like this is so good to have, and then like what's kind of the snapshot data that would be really good to have a little bit more often, that probably could come as an email to us to say like, I don't even like know what it would be, but yeah, I agree. Like it's instead of having it like all at once, it would be kind of nice to have some things like throughout the year. But
And I think you're probably experiencing us process in the pendulum of we want to know what you're doing, and then you tell us what you're doing. We're like, well, you don't need to know all that. I feel like kind of that, but that's why I do like the card that has this ties together the priority to the outcome to the strategies, because that's only saying what you're doing, and then we've got the process measures about how is that work coming along, and then what's the outcome. So I do like the layout of this page for sure, but I think you're always, you know, we're digesting this and discussing, so you're watching us process.
And this is our first experience, right, articulating this for you. And so when we think about the magnifier, right, for each of the 4 strategic directions, what's the continuous improvement process that we're trying to tap into and like as a lever adjust so that we can stimulate some growth in each of those 4 strategic directions, right? So for each of those cards, Vice Chair Brooks, when you were asking that question, I was like, oh, right, like, so we didn't explain that well. so how do we understand that the magnifier is trying to really amplify what is the process that we're digging into to interrupt that pattern that we're seeing happening in our data, right? And so we've got to coach leaders, right, on how they're using their dig data to identify a challenge or a subgroup that they want to focus in on and work with to drive stronger and better results. Like this is what we're trying to do. So we are making visible some things that we wouldn't typically make visible, but we're showing you how we're trying to interrupt those patterns through the magnifier. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I like when we had some. Oh, sorry, I interrupted.
No.
Okay, I like perhaps previously when we've had some example of some outcomes from these continuous improvement cycles. So even hearing some of those wins during the year, kind of the aha, we took this action, is just like highlight real.
Well, I think even when we heard the principals speak,
yes.
you know, I mean, like I think we all were like, oh my gosh, like that, like obviously had been, I mean, those are building leaders that have gone on this journey, and like to hear how they are in practice, what that looks like in their building. Like, yeah, I get on the floor and I play with a kindergartner like half of my day. Like, I mean, you know, I mean, that's pretty, like, that's a big deal, you know, like I don't know if people know that, you know, and I think that was probably one of the highlights that I've even my duration on the board, like to just really hear that from our leaders in a setting like that. So.
Thank you. Okay, so our next steps, I was going straight to the thank you.
And we're done. And we're spent.
We'll continue to collect input and develop the new process and outcome measures. Part of what will be shared later is we will be engaging students in listening sessions to. We've received feedback from you all around, man, some of these scales, some of these items seem antiquated, or like the way that they're written feel old. And so we're going to engage students in the process of helping us with the student stakeholder being revised. We've got the we're going to continue to complete the system strategy snapshot for all of the strategies that are happening around strategic direction A, and then of course we're integrating your feedback for further refinement. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thank you. All right, while you guys are shifting, we're going to jump into the one-year school board calendar, and I just wanted to bring to your attention, because I know you can read by yourself, but originally in November, December, January, we're going to be working with our scholars, or our board reps, on standard-based grading. So we're going to shift that. So we're going to be having our students, Amy T helps guide their work. They're going to have an internal session with Amy Moore and Amy T, learn about some of our 500 policies, get that input. And then they'll come to the work session on 12/9 and discuss the 500 policies with you all and get input and go back and forth. And then at the board meeting on December 16th, they'll do a presentation about meeting with the board and discussions they had around the 500 policies. So what changed was, is the standards-based grading. So the more we started thinking about it, that we wanted to have those discussions. It's just that as we peel the onion, this may need to be a longer action research study. So we won't be able to go, okay, that's it, we're done. No, we need a lot of input on that. So in January, the standards-based grading practices is that we're actually going to teach the board what that is, share with the board what it is, what's the history of it, what's there. We'll have some questions where we can go back and forth. And then the students during that month will be working with Amy T and probably Dr. Kine, learning more about standards-based grading. They'll come to the board meeting, the work session in February to talk to you all about thoughts on standards-based grading. Then they'll share it at the board. But I just want to let you know, this is something that's going to have to go further. So this is something that standards-based grading, we're going to have to get input from administration, we're going to have to get input from teachers, we're going to have to get input from parents. So, we started where but once you start to dig in it, this is a big thing. If all of a sudden we're going to change. I'm not saying we're going to change, but we really need to have a thorough study of the why, the impact, and if we still want to move forward with it. So that's the part I just wanted to share on that. So, okay.
I love it.
Cool.
Vice Chair. I'm excited for the student, like the 500 students.
All right. Meeting adjourned.
No.
What are we-
Resolution.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I sent the board an email. MSBA has changed how they take in resolutions to the MSBA platform. So I'm talking about MSBA platform, not our legislative platform. In the past, any board member could submit to MSBA a resolution, and then it would be voted on by the delegate assembly. So that change is creating some disruptions across boards because it has the perception that we all have to agree on this resolution item for it to go to MSBA. We vary year by year on if we have resolutions, if there's interest in resolutions. But if there is a desire by any board member to submit a resolution for the MSBA platform, we'll have to vote on it at our next board meeting in order for it to be an application to MSBA. So let me know so that we can add it to the agenda. I mentioned one resolution that's focused on encouraging the legislature not to have significant legislation of mandates or cutting funding or things that are cost burdensome passed in May for implementation in July, that there's some language about giving us the time to react to that. So that looked like a good one we might want to consider. So I'm considering bringing that one to our board in order to submit. My thinking is that because this is a transition year, I think my personal view is we should have a maximum opportunity for board members to pass through our board to MSBA. So that's my mindset, I guess, going into this, that if we were to pass resolutions to continue on to MSBA, it's supporting that board member participating in the process, not necessarily saying this is for our legislative platform or we all have to agree. That's my thinking on the approach on it. I don't know if anybody else has a resolution that they want to bring, but I think we should, with this transition year, it's like kind of hot off the press. I would not want to impede board members' opportunity to participate at MSBA.
But does that mean then that I feel like if we pass it, like if it's something that, I hear the spirit of what you're saying, but like, if we as a board pass something, and what if like, I don't particularly agree with it?
Yeah.
But I hear what you're saying, but then doesn't that mean like, as a board, we are endorsing that if we?
It depends on how we do it. We can approve that board member's submission to MSBA. I think we.
I'm not in a post like you're.
Yeah, no.
Saying,
And I don't know if anybody has resolutions.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a matter of we see if anybody has something. Yeah, because I see your point, and that's what's causing division on some boards where it's like, well, I don't agree with that, so I don't want to pass it.
Yeah, because it's like, are you by
yeah
approving it? Are you saying that Osseo School Board then we're like here, we're a big muscle, so we're like, here we go, we support.
Yeah,
I don't know. I just question.
One school district I saw, they didn't have their own resolution. They actually had the MSBA submission form, and they voted on that submission form to approve it to go to MSBA. So it was not like really for their district. It was for the application or the submission. But maybe it's a matter of see what interest there even is, and maybe it's a non-issue for us.
Yeah, I don't know. I just
Okay, well, let me know, because we'd have to vote on it by next board meeting. So if we can, maybe within a week from today, let me know if you have something that you would like to bring to the board meeting so we can have it on the agenda. And that way we can also make sure everybody sees it before it comes to the board. Okay, now I'm done.
All right, now meeting adjourned at 8:39.